When people debate the greatest high school basketball team ever assembled, several legendary names always enter the conversation. The 2016 Chino Hills Huskies, led by Lonzo, LiAngelo, and LaMelo Ball, revolutionized high school basketball with their fast-paced offense and highlight-filled games. Oak Hill Academy produced generations of NBA players and dominated national rankings for decades. Findlay Prep became known for developing elite Division I prospects year after year. But over the last few years, one team has slowly climbed above all of them in the eyes of basketball fans, scouts, coaches, and even NBA executives. That team is the 2019-2020 Montverde Academy Eagles. To understand why this team receives so much praise, you first have to understand what Montverde Academy represents. Located in Montverde, Florida, the school has become the gold standard of high school basketball. Unlike traditional public high schools that recruit mostly from their local communities, Montverde attracts elite prospects from around the world. Every year, some of the best teenagers in basketball leave their hometowns and move across the country, or even across continents, to play for the Eagles. Their goal isn't just to win championships. Their goal is to prepare for college basketball and eventually the NBA. That reputation didn't happen overnight. It was built over years of excellence under legendary head coach Kevin Boyle. Before arriving at Montverde, Boyle had already established himself as one of the greatest high school basketball coaches in America. His teams were known for discipline, toughness, and an obsession with fundamentals. When he took over the Montverde program in 2011, he transformed it into the most feared basketball school in the country. Every season, Montverde played the toughest schedule possible, facing nationally ranked opponents from every corner of the United States. They weren't interested in padding their record against weaker competition. They wanted to prove they were the best by beating the best. By the time the 2019-2020 season arrived, Montverde had already produced an incredible list of NBA players. Ben Simmons, the first overall pick in the 2016 NBA draft, had dominated high school basketball while wearing a Montverde jersey. D'Angelo Russell developed into one of the country's top guards before becoming the second overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. R.J. Barrett, another Canadian superstar, became the third overall pick in 2019 after a remarkable career at Duke. Joel Embiid also spent time at Montverde before transferring to another prep school, while players like Dakari Johnson, Casey Hill, and several others went on to successful college careers. Every year, NBA scouts filled Montverde's gym because they knew there was almost guaranteed to be future professional talent on the court. Still, nobody expected what the 2020 roster would become. When the season officially began, recruiting analysts already believed Montverde had assembled the most talented team in the country. They featured the #1 player in America, multiple McDonald's All-Americans, future first-round draft picks, and several players who would eventually hear their names called on NBA draft night. What made this group different from previous super teams wasn't simply that they had elite talent. It was that every single player accepted the fact that they might score fewer points because they were surrounded by other future stars. Instead of competing against one another, they competed together. The leader of this extraordinary roster was Cade Cunningham. Even before playing a single college game, Cade was already viewed as the best high school basketball player in America. Standing 6'7" with the skills of an elite point guard, Cunningham immediately stood out because of how effortlessly he controlled games. Unlike explosive scorers who relied on athleticism, Cade played with incredible patience. He rarely forced shots, rarely rushed possessions, and almost never looked out of control. Watching him play was like watching a veteran NBA point guard disguised as a high school senior. One of the most impressive things about Cade Cunningham was that his statistics never fully captured how dominant he actually was. He averaged just under 14 points per game, along with over 6 assists and 4 rebounds. At first glance, those numbers might not seem extraordinary for the #1 recruit in America. But there was an important reason for that. Montverde won so many games by such large margins that Cade often sat on the bench for the entire fourth quarter. Many nights, he only played around 20 minutes because the game was already decided. Had he played normal starter minutes, many analysts believe he easily could have averaged over 25 points and double-digit assists. Cade's greatest strength wasn't scoring. It was decision-making. Every possession seemed to slow down whenever he had the basketball. He knew exactly when to attack, when to pass, and when to allow someone else to take over. His maturity made him the perfect floor general for a roster filled with elite talent. Instead of worrying about his own statistics, he focused entirely on making his teammates better. That mentality perfectly reflected Kevin Boyle's coaching philosophy. Playing alongside Cade was another future NBA All-Star, Scottie Barnes. If Cunningham represented calm leadership, Barnes represented non-stop energy. At 6'8", Scottie possessed an incredibly rare combination of size, athleticism, defensive versatility, and passing ability. He could guard point guards on one possession and centers on the next. He sprinted the floor in transition, dove for loose balls, protected the rim, and celebrated every great play made by his teammates. His passion was contagious. Scottie Barnes wasn't just one of the country's best defenders. He was also one of its best playmakers. Despite his forward size, he handled the basketball like a guard and constantly looked for open teammates. His unselfishness perfectly complemented Cade Cunningham's patient approach. Instead of competing to become the team's biggest star, the two future NBA lottery picks developed incredible chemistry. Many scouts later admitted that watching Cade and Scottie together taught them more about winning basketball than watching either player individually. Another major reason Montverde became nearly unstoppable was Moses Moody. Unlike Cunningham and Barnes, Moody's greatest strength was scoring. He was one of the purest shooters in high school basketball. Defenses couldn't leave him open because his jump shot was smooth, quick, and incredibly consistent. But Moody wasn't just a spot-up shooter. He could attack closeouts, finish around the rim, and defend multiple positions. His versatility made Montverde even harder to guard because every player on the floor could both score and create opportunities for others. Inside the paint stood Sharpe, one of the most physically dominant big men in America. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with tremendous strength, Sharpe controlled the interior on both ends of the floor. He grabbed offensive rebounds, finished through contact, blocked shots, and intimidated opposing players every time they entered the lane. While Cade, Scottie, and Moody stretched defenses on the perimeter, Sharpe punished teams inside. Opponents quickly realized there was no easy answer. If they collapsed into the paint, the shooters punished them. If they defended the perimeter, Sharpe dominated near the basket. Perhaps even more unbelievable was the amount of young talent waiting behind those stars. Sophomore Caleb Houston already looked like a future NBA player. Freshman Derek Whitehead was considered one of the nation's brightest young prospects. Ryan Nembhard controlled the second unit with exceptional passing ability, while Langston Love and Zeb Jackson added even more scoring and athleticism. Most high school teams have one future NBA player. Montverde had entire practice sessions filled with future professionals. Kevin Boyle often said that practices were harder than games, and it wasn't an exaggeration. Every single day, future NBA draft picks competed against one another in drills that demanded maximum effort. Iron sharpened iron. Players became better simply because of who they practiced against. By the time game day arrived, facing another high school team often felt easier than facing their own teammates. That extraordinary combination of coaching, talent, discipline, and selflessness created something basketball had rarely seen before. On paper, they were the most talented team in America. On the court, they quickly began proving they might become one of the greatest high school basketball teams ever assembled. As the 2019-20 season officially got underway, it did not take long for everyone around the country to realize that Montverde Academy was operating on a completely different level than every other high school basketball team. Their roster was already loaded with 5-star recruits and future NBA players, but what truly separated them from everyone else was the way they played together. There was no selfishness, no chasing statistics, and no player trying to prove he was better than his teammates. Every possession was built around making the right basketball play, and because every player had such a high basketball IQ, opponents quickly found themselves overwhelmed. The Eagles immediately climbed to the #1 ranking in the nation, but unlike many top-ranked teams, they never looked satisfied. Kevin Boyle constantly reminded his players that rankings meant nothing if they did not continue improving. Every practice was treated like a playoff game. Defensive rotations had to be perfect. Players were expected to communicate on every possession, sprint in transition, and make the extra pass instead of forcing difficult shots. Boyle understood that talent alone would not make this team legendary. Their discipline and commitment to winning would. One of the most impressive parts of watching Montverde was how effortless everything seemed. They rarely played rushed basketball. Cade Cunningham controlled the pace like a veteran NBA point guard. If the defense pressured him, he calmly broke the press and found the open teammate. If defenders sagged off him, he attacked the basket. If help defenders collapsed into the paint, Cade immediately found one of the team's shooters. He never looked sped up, even against the best defenses in the country. Scouts often commented that Cade already understood the game several steps ahead of everyone else on the floor. Scottie Barnes brought an entirely different dimension to the team. While Cade was calm and methodical, Scottie played with relentless energy every second he was on the court. He celebrated his teammates' baskets louder than his own, constantly encouraged everyone around him, and defended whoever the opposing team's best player happened to be. Some nights he guarded point guards. Other nights he battled centers in the paint. His versatility made Montverde's defense almost impossible to attack because there were no weak defenders to exploit. Offensively, Barnes often acted as a second point guard. At 6'8", he could grab a defensive rebound and immediately push the ball himself, creating fast break opportunities without needing an outlet pass. His vision was exceptional, and he frequently made passes that most players his size would never even attempt. It became obvious why NBA scouts believed he would eventually become one of the most versatile players in professional basketball. While Cade and Scottie received much of the national attention, Moody quietly became one of the most important pieces of the team. Every championship roster needs elite spacing, and Moody provided exactly that. His shooting forced defenders to stay attached to him at all times, opening driving lanes for Cunningham and Barnes. But Moody was much more than just a shooter. He defended with intensity, attacked closeouts intelligently, and consistently made smart decisions with the basketball. His willingness to embrace a team-first role despite being one of the nation's best scorers demonstrated the culture Kevin Boyle had created. Inside the paint, Sharpe gave Montverde something very few high school teams possessed: complete control of the interior. Sharpe's combination of size, strength, and athleticism made him nearly impossible to move under the basket. Defensively, he altered countless shots without even recording a block because opponents were afraid to challenge him. Offensively, he dominated the offensive glass, creating second-chance opportunities that often broke the spirit of opposing teams. Coaches understood that even if they defended perfectly for 20 seconds, Sharpe could simply grab the rebound and give Montverde another possession. What made the Eagles even more dangerous was their incredible depth. Most nationally ranked teams depended heavily on their starting five. Montverde could substitute multiple players without seeing any noticeable drop in performance. Ryan Nembhard came off the bench and immediately controlled the offense with excellent passing and decision-making. Although he was younger than some of the stars, his basketball IQ allowed him to run the team whenever Cade rested. Years later, Nembhard would become one of the best point guards in college basketball, proving just how talented Montverde's bench truly was. Caleb Houston, despite being only a sophomore, already looked like a future professional player. Standing around 6'8", he possessed outstanding shooting ability, smooth footwork, and excellent instincts. He never forced the game and always seemed to make the correct decision. It was easy to forget how young he was because of how mature his game already appeared. His size allowed him to defend multiple positions, while his offensive versatility gave Montverde another dangerous weapon. Another player beginning to make a name for himself was Derek Whitehead. Although he was still early in his high school career, coaches around the country immediately recognized his enormous potential. Whitehead possessed explosive athleticism, confidence, and natural scoring instincts that suggested he would one day become another first-round NBA draft selection. Looking back now, it's remarkable to realize that multiple future NBA players were still developing behind an already stacked roster. Montverde's dominance became even more impressive once they started facing other nationally ranked programs. Unlike many schools that schedule easier opponents, Montverde deliberately sought out the toughest competition in America. Every major showcase event featured the Eagles because fans wanted to see whether anyone could actually challenge them. One of the biggest games of the season came against IMG Academy, another Florida powerhouse loaded with Division I talent. IMG had built one of the country's strongest basketball programs and entered the matchup believing they had the size and athleticism necessary to compete with Montverde. The game attracted enormous attention because it featured multiple future NBA players on both sides and was viewed by many as a preview of the unofficial national championship. From the opening tip, however, Montverde demonstrated why they were considered the nation's best team. Cade Cunningham completely controlled the pace of the game, refusing to let IMG speed him up. Scottie Barnes disrupted passing lanes with his length and versatility, while Sharpe dominated inside whenever IMG attempted to attack the paint. Moody stretched the floor with timely shooting, forcing IMG's defense into impossible decisions. By the second half, Montverde had taken complete control, once again proving they were operating on another level. Another memorable challenge came against Sunrise Christian Academy, another nationally ranked basketball powerhouse. Sunrise featured multiple high-level Division I recruits and had enough talent to compete with nearly every team in America. Many expected a close battle because Sunrise possessed elite athleticism and excellent perimeter defense. Instead, Montverde once again displayed remarkable composure. Rather than trying to out-athlete Sunrise, they relied on execution. Every offensive possession featured crisp ball movement, intelligent spacing, and excellent shot selection. Defensively, they switched seamlessly across every screen, limiting Sunrise's scoring opportunities. By the final buzzer, Montverde had secured another convincing victory, further strengthening their claim as the nation's best team. Oak Hill Academy also represented one of the most respected basketball programs in America. For decades, Oak Hill had been synonymous with greatness, producing NBA stars such as Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Rajon Rondo, Brandon Jennings, and countless others. Every meeting between Oak Hill and Montverde carried enormous historical significance because it represented two of high school basketball's greatest programs. Against Oak Hill, Montverde's discipline once again proved to be the difference. While Oak Hill possessed tremendous individual talent, Montverde consistently made the extra pass, rotated defensively, and trusted one another completely. Their chemistry overwhelmed even one of the most prestigious basketball schools in the country. Perhaps the most incredible statistic from the season wasn't simply that Montverde remained undefeated. It was how they won. The Eagles defeated opponents by an average margin approaching 40 points per game. Even nationally ranked teams struggled to remain competitive. Many contests were effectively decided before halftime, allowing Kevin Boyle to rest his starters during the fourth quarter. This not only protected his players from injury but also explained why many of their individual statistics appeared modest compared to other five-star recruits around the country. Despite winning comfortably almost every night, Kevin Boyle refused to allow his players to become complacent. Following victories by 30 or 40 points, practices often focused entirely on mistakes made during the game rather than celebrating the final score. Boyle constantly reminded his team that championships are won through habits, not headlines. That mentality kept Montverde focused throughout the entire season. As victories continued to pile up, NBA scouts became regular visitors at Montverde games. It was common to see representatives from nearly every NBA franchise sitting courtside. Some scouts admitted they weren't even evaluating just one player anymore, they were watching an entire future NBA roster share the floor together. Few high school teams in history had ever attracted that level of professional attention on a nightly basis. By the middle of the season, the conversation had already shifted. People were no longer asking whether Montverde was the best team in America. Instead, they had begun asking whether this was the greatest high school basketball team ever assembled. Every dominant performance only strengthened that argument, and with every passing week, it became harder and harder to disagree. As the season continued, it became increasingly clear that the 2020 Montverde Academy Eagles were no longer chasing the title of the best team in the country. They were chasing history. Every dominant performance added another chapter to what many scouts believed was the most talented high school basketball roster ever assembled. Games that were expected to be competitive often turned into blowouts, not because the opposing teams lacked talent, but because Montverde simply had too many elite players who complemented each other perfectly. One of the biggest reasons this team became so successful was Kevin Boyle's coaching philosophy. Unlike many elite high school programs where one superstar dominates the ball and puts up huge scoring numbers, Boyle wanted every player to learn how to play winning basketball. His practices emphasized defense before offense, ball movement before isolation, and making the extra pass instead of chasing personal statistics. Every player was held accountable regardless of how highly they were ranked. It did not matter if you were the #1 recruit in America or the last player off the bench. If you failed to rotate defensively, missed an assignment, or didn't communicate, Boyle would immediately stop practice and correct the mistake. That level of discipline is one of the biggest reasons Montverde has become an NBA factory. College coaches often say that when they recruit a player from Montverde, they already know that player understands defensive rotations, help side defense, transition responsibilities, and how to play within a structured offense. Instead of teaching those habits from scratch, college programs can focus on developing individual skills because the foundation has already been built. Cade Cunningham was perhaps the greatest example of that philosophy. Even though he entered the season as the consensus #1 player in America, he never played like someone trying to prove he was the best. Instead, he played like someone trying to make everyone around him better. His leadership was quiet but incredibly effective. Cade rarely celebrated flashy plays or chased highlight moments. He simply controlled games with his intelligence. When the season ended, Cade committed to Oklahoma State University. Although he only spent one season there, he immediately established himself as one of the best players in college basketball. He averaged over 20 points per game while carrying Oklahoma State back into national relevance. Cade won numerous national awards, including Big 12 Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year, and became the clear favorite to be selected first overall in the NBA draft. In 2021, the Detroit Pistons selected Cade Cunningham with the first overall pick in the NBA draft. The Pistons viewed him as the future face of their franchise because of his unique combination of size, leadership, scoring ability, and basketball IQ. Even after reaching the NBA, many analysts pointed to his time at Montverde as one of the biggest reasons he adjusted so quickly to professional basketball. Playing alongside elite talent every day prepared him for the speed and decision-making required at the highest level. Scottie Barnes followed a similar path. After graduating from Montverde, he attended Florida State University under legendary coach Leonard Hamilton. Barnes continued doing exactly what made him successful in high school. He defended every position, played with unmatched energy, and constantly made winning plays that didn't always appear on the stat sheet. Many NBA scouts originally questioned whether Barnes could become an elite offensive player, but they never questioned his effort or versatility. During the 2021 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors surprised many fans by selecting Scottie with the 4th overall pick instead of Gonzaga star Jalen Suggs. At the time, many people criticized the decision, but Toronto believed Barnes had superstar potential because of his unique skill set. That belief paid off almost immediately. Scottie won the NBA Rookie of the Year award after an outstanding first season, proving that the Raptors had made the right choice. Since then, he has developed into an NBA All-Star and one of the league's most versatile young forwards. Looking back, it became obvious that the habits he developed under Kevin Boyle, defense, passing, unselfishness, and toughness, translated perfectly to the NBA. Moses Moody also continued his basketball journey after leaving Montverde. He chose the University of Arkansas, where he quickly became one of the best freshmen in college basketball. Moody averaged nearly 17 points per game while establishing himself as one of the nation's best two-way wings. His smooth shooting stroke, defensive versatility, and mature decision-making made him another first-round NBA prospect. During the 2021 NBA Draft, the Golden State Warriors selected Moody with the 14th overall pick. Joining a championship organization led by Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green gave Moody an opportunity to continue developing while learning from some of the greatest players in NBA history. Although he entered the league as a young role player, his work ethic and basketball IQ made him an important contributor on one of the NBA's best teams. Sharpe took a different route but remained just as successful. After Montverde, Sharpe attended the University of North Carolina, one of the most historic basketball programs in America. His physical style of play immediately translated to the college level. He became one of the ACC's top rebounders and interior defenders despite being only a freshman. Following his lone college season, Sharpe declared for the NBA draft and was selected in the first round before eventually joining the Brooklyn Nets. His role in the NBA mirrored the one he played at Montverde. He protected the rim, rebounded aggressively, finished around the basket, and provided physicality whenever his team needed it. While he may not receive the same attention as some of his former teammates, Sharpe has become a valuable NBA rotation player. Caleb Houston's development was equally impressive. Although he was only a sophomore during the legendary 2020 season, NBA scouts already recognized his enormous potential. Over the next 2 years, Houston continued improving as one of Canada's top basketball prospects before committing to the University of Michigan. At Michigan, Houston showcased his shooting ability and versatility before entering the NBA draft. He was selected by the Orlando Magic, giving Montverde yet another NBA player from the same roster. Houston's ability to stretch the floor and defend multiple positions reflected the exact style of basketball Kevin Boyle had emphasized throughout his high school career. One player who may have benefited the most from practicing against so many future NBA stars was Derek Whitehead. During the 2020 season, Whitehead was still one of the youngest players on the roster, but every day he practiced against Cade Cunningham, Scottie Barnes, Moody, and Sharpe. Those experiences accelerated his development far beyond what most high school freshmen experience. Over the next several years, Whitehead became one of the highest-ranked recruits in the country before committing to Duke University. Despite battling injuries throughout his college career, NBA teams remained impressed by his athleticism and scoring ability. He was eventually selected in the first round of the 2023 NBA draft by the Brooklyn Nets, adding another NBA player to Montverde's already unbelievable list. Ryan Nembhard may not have entered high school with the same level of national recognition as Cade or Scottie, but he quietly developed into one of the best point guards in college basketball. His exceptional passing ability, leadership, and basketball IQ helped him become one of the nation's top assist leaders. Many coaches have praised Nembhard for the maturity and professionalism he developed during his time at Montverde. Looking back, what makes this roster so incredible isn't simply the number of NBA players it produced. It's the quality of those players. Cade Cunningham became the first overall pick. Scottie Barnes became an NBA All-Star and Rookie of the Year. Moody became a first-round selection for a championship organization. Sharpe developed into a valuable NBA center. Caleb Houston reached the NBA. Derek Whitehead became another first-round pick. Ryan Nembhard emerged as one of the best point guards in college basketball. Few teams in basketball history, at any level, have produced that much professional talent from one locker room. As the Eagles continued winning game after game, another storyline began to emerge. Basketball analysts started comparing the 2020 Montverde Academy team to some of the greatest high school teams ever assembled. The 2016 Chino Hills Huskies had revolutionized offense with Lonzo Ball, LiAngelo Ball, LaMelo Ball, and Onyeka Okongwu. Oak Hill Academy had built a dynasty spanning decades. Findlay Prep had developed countless NBA prospects. Yet many experts believed Montverde had surpassed them all. It wasn't because they had the flashiest highlights or the highest scoring offense. It was because they combined elite talent with elite coaching, elite chemistry, and complete selflessness. Every player sacrificed personal success for team success, and in doing so, they created something that may never be replicated again. Then, just as the Eagles were preparing for the biggest stage of the season, something happened that nobody could have predicted. A global pandemic would bring the basketball world to a complete stop, ending one of the greatest seasons in high school basketball history before it could officially finish. As the 2019-20 season entered its final stretch, Montverde Academy had accomplished everything that was expected of them and more. They remained undefeated, they had defeated every major opponent placed in front of them, and they were preparing for what many believed would be the easiest run to a national championship in recent memory. The Geico Nationals tournament, which featured the best high school basketball teams in the country, was supposed to be the stage where Montverde would officially cement its place among the greatest teams ever assembled. Fans were excited to watch Cade Cunningham, Scottie Barnes, Moody, Sharpe, and the rest of the Eagles compete for one final championship before many of them moved on to college basketball. NBA scouts were expected to fill every seat in the arena, and basketball fans around the country were preparing to witness one of the most talented high school teams ever take the floor. Then, everything changed. In March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic brought sports around the world to a complete stop. Professional leagues suspended their seasons, college tournaments were cancelled, and high school championships were called off almost overnight. The Geico Nationals tournament was officially cancelled before Montverde had the opportunity to compete. Just like that, one of the greatest high school basketball seasons in history came to an unexpected end. For many players, it was heartbreaking. Months of preparation had been leading toward one final opportunity to prove themselves on the biggest stage in high school basketball. Instead, the season ended without a championship game. There was no dramatic final victory, no championship celebration, and no opportunity to complete what many believed would have been one of the most dominant postseason runs ever seen. Despite never getting the chance to play in Geico Nationals, almost every major media outlet still recognized Montverde Academy as the consensus #1 team in the country. They finished the season with a perfect 25-0 record, and because no team had come close to defeating them, there was little debate about who deserved the national championship. Their average margin of victory was close to 40 points per game, a statistic that becomes even more unbelievable when you remember they were playing against many of the strongest programs in America. Years after that season ended, basketball fans began asking a fascinating question. Was the 2020 Montverde Academy team actually better than the legendary 2016 Chino Hills Huskies? It is a debate that still continues today. The 2016 Chino Hills team became famous because they changed the style of high school basketball. Led by Lonzo Ball, LiAngelo Ball, LaMelo Ball, and Onyeka Okongwu, they played at a pace that no one had ever seen before. They averaged nearly 100 points per game, pushed the ball after every rebound, and turned every possession into a highlight. Watching Chino Hills felt like watching a basketball show. Their creativity, confidence, and flashy style made them one of the most entertaining teams in basketball history. Montverde was almost the complete opposite. They did not rely on flashy passes or deep three-pointers every possession. Instead, they focused on execution. Every defensive rotation was perfect. Every offensive possession had purpose. Every player understood spacing, timing, and ball movement. They were not trying to entertain the crowd. They were trying to play perfect basketball. That difference is why comparing the two teams is so difficult. If fans wanted excitement, they often chose Chino Hills. If coaches wanted to teach winning basketball, many chose Montverde. Another reason many analysts give the edge to Montverde is because of the sheer amount of NBA talent on the roster. The Ball brothers eventually produced two NBA stars in Lonzo and LaMelo, while Onyeka Okongwu became a top 6 NBA draft pick. Chino Hills was incredibly talented, but Montverde's roster reached another level. Cade Cunningham became the first overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft. Scottie Barnes became the 4th overall pick, won NBA Rookie of the Year, and later became an NBA All-Star. Moses Moody became the 14th overall pick and joined the Golden State Warriors. Day'Ron Sharpe became a first-round NBA draft pick. Caleb Houston reached the NBA with the Orlando Magic. Derek Whitehead became another first-round NBA draft pick. Ryan Nembhard developed into one of the best point guards in college basketball and continued building a professional career. When you look back at that roster today, it almost feels impossible that all of those players shared the same locker room. Every practice featured future NBA talent competing against future NBA talent. Many people who attended Montverde practices have said they were often more competitive than the actual games because of the level of talent on both sides of the court. Perhaps the greatest achievement of Kevin Boyle was not simply recruiting talented players. Many schools recruit elite prospects. Boyle's greatest accomplishment was convincing those players to sacrifice individual success for the benefit of the team. Cade Cunningham could have averaged 30 points per game somewhere else. Scottie Barnes could have been the primary ball handler on almost any team in America. Moses Moody could have taken twice as many shots. Day'Ron Sharpe could have demanded every post touch. Instead, every player accepted a smaller statistical role because they understood something much bigger was at stake. Winning mattered more than numbers. That mentality is one of the biggest reasons so many Montverde players transition successfully to college and eventually the NBA. They already know how to play alongside other stars. They already understand sacrifice. They already understand defensive responsibility. They enter college not only as talented athletes but as complete basketball players. The legacy of the 2020 Montverde Academy Eagles continues to grow every single NBA season. Every time Cade Cunningham leads the Detroit Pistons, every time Scottie Barnes fills the stat sheet in Toronto, every time Moses Moody contributes for Golden State, every time Day'Ron Sharpe grabs an important rebound for Brooklyn, every time Caleb Houston steps onto an NBA floor, fans are reminded that these players once wore the same high school jersey. That is something almost impossible to imagine. It is rare enough for one NBA player to come from a high school team. It is rare for two. 3 is extraordinary. Montverde produced an entire roster of future professionals in a single season. Even more impressive is that several of those players have become franchise cornerstones. Cade Cunningham has developed into one of the brightest young stars in the NBA. Scottie Barnes has become the face of the Toronto Raptors' future. Moses Moody continues developing on a championship-caliber team. The list continues to grow as more former Montverde players reach the professional level. When historians look back at high school basketball decades from now, the 2020 Montverde Academy Eagles will almost certainly be remembered as one of the defining teams of the modern era. They represented everything that makes basketball beautiful. Elite coaching. Elite teamwork. Elite defense. Unselfish offense. Discipline. Humility. And above all else, winning. Their perfect season may have ended in the most unusual way imaginable because of a global pandemic, but it did nothing to diminish what they accomplished. If anything, the absence of a final tournament only added to the mystery of their legacy. Fans will always wonder how dominant they would have been during Geico Nationals. Many believe they would have won the championship comfortably, while others wish they had been given one final opportunity to prove themselves against the nation's best. That unanswered question has become part of their story. Some teams are remembered because they won championships. Some teams are remembered because they produced NBA stars. Very few teams are remembered because they changed how people think about basketball. The 2020 Montverde Academy Eagles accomplished all three. They were more than just a collection of 5-star recruits. They were a perfectly constructed basketball team whose players bought into a single vision. Their chemistry, discipline, and extraordinary talent created a season that may never be duplicated. Whether you believe they are the greatest high school basketball team ever assembled or simply one of the greatest, one thing is impossible to deny. The 2020 Montverde Academy Eagles set a standard that every elite high school program has been chasing ever since. Years later, coaches still study them, scouts still talk about them, and basketball fans still debate their place in history. For one unforgettable season, Montverde Academy wasn't just the best team in America. They were basketball perfection.